I'm so curious to kind of dive into this because we talked about metaverse, the metaverse, and Facebook building the metaverse. We spoke before the name change, right? And
Yeah,
so
we did.
a lot of news has happened, uh, and it's interesting.
Yeah. So Facebook says that they are shutting down their facial recognition system because they're basically saying that they want to find the right balance to make sure that they're not negatively impacting society with their facial recognition. And it's like 10 years later and you're just now worried about the social impact.
Yep.
Like Facebook's whole their whole entire motto was move fast and break things, and now it's slow down and discontinue stuff. Like something suspicious is going on here to me. I don't know. What do
I
you think?
I think it's just scrutiny, especially from regulators and
Yeah.
the government.
Yeah.
I
Well,
tuned into some of the stuff they've been going through with on like Capitol Hill and stuff, and it's just not pleasant. And I'm sure that
yeah.
at this point, no one wants to. Probably tired of doing it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they were fined $5 billion by the FTC in 2019, and the primary concern from the FTC was their facial recognition software, or maybe not the primary concerns, but it was definitely one of the big ones. And then again in 2019, Illinois settled a class action lawsuit with Facebook for $650 million because they accused Facebook of violating the state's laws that require them to get consent before using biometric information.
Wow.
Yeah. So 2 years after that, they decide we're just discontinuing it.
Crazy. I so that's really interesting. But kind of like, you think this is part of just a pivot too? Because they changed the name. They change, in a name change, I would think, if you're Facebook, would want to shed some of the baggage
Brand washing.
associated with exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? You think that's part of this?
Probably. I mean, the thing is, like, they said that they're discontinuing this, but they're not making a promise that they'll never bring it back. And so it's
Mhm.
like, it's like Philip Morris saying, "Oh yeah, we removed like the toxic additive that we were adding to make our product more addictive, but it's still really, really, really bad for you." You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like Facebook is like, "Oh yeah, we're removing this one thing that is like incredibly damaging to our users' privacy, but we're also working on a thing that will literally work to predict and monetize every aspect of human behavior, the metaverse." Like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, this is all, I think, a marketing stunt. Like, this is all just to try and like recover whatever goodwill I think that Facebook thinks that they might be able to have with people. And it's cynical, I think. It is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're deleting all of this data that they have collected. That's a good thing. And they deserve to get props in whatever small measure they deserve to get it. But at the same time, they progressed this technology to the point that it's at today. Like, Facebook was one of the very first to implement it at the scale that they implemented it at. And while they didn't sell it to like third parties or other, government entities, like, it was still available. That data was still in their databases to be queried in the result, in the event that like a warrant was issued or something. Facebook, this is like half of the reason that we're here today with this technology as ubiquitous as it is because of Facebook. Like, they've been running this stuff since 2010. and people have been complaining about it the whole time. And it's like, if Facebook was really concerned about the impact that the tech was having on society, they would have listened to people back then. So I don't buy any of the jargon and the disinformation that they're putting out there about this. I don't think that this is about them being concerned about society. This is about them being concerned about their brand's image. And I know that sounds cynical on my part, but whatever.
Yeah. What's sad too is I think that there are people inside of Facebook, as we learned with like the whistleblower.
Yeah.
I think there are people inside of Facebook who
genuinely care.
They see the problems and they want to fix them, but apparently there's just too many hurdles to actually making those changes internally, which I think is because I think you have people at the top who are like, we're going to maximize profits at all costs, and they've made the old calculus that a lot of this stuff people just won't dive into, they don't care about, and that was true. I think it probably is still mostly true. It only takes a certain percentage of people to get upset about it before it's really hard to overcome that bad.
I think Facebook has what I like to call evil inertia. It's like, it's been set up in a way, like from the very beginning, to manipulate people and to drive engagement and to, I mean, just the fact that like it was set up so that it was exclusive to people who had college email addresses. Like that in itself was manipulative. And like that's the whole point of Facebook. It always has been. And so like you were talking about like people who are in the company who want to do good. And I definitely acknowledge that there are lots of people in Facebook who want to do good and they want to see Facebook change for the better. But like from my perspective, fundamentally Facebook is evil. And like it has, like, in order for goodness to come out of that company, so many things have to change. And the direction that the company's heading in, I mean, the whole metaverse thing is like, they're heading in this direction in order to just basically monopolize and monetize human interaction. And it's like every aspect of being a person, they want to monetize in some way. Show you ads, predict your how you're going to respond to certain ads, blah, blah, blah. That's the whole point. And so for me, it's like, yeah, this is probably a good thing. I mean, it is a good thing that Facebook's deleting all this information. But at the same time, why are they talking about this now? Like I said, I mean, it's been 10 years since people have been giving them grief over this. And I think the reason that they're doing this now is because the Facebook papers came out. And there's so much damning information in there that they had to pull a Trump and be like, oh, everybody's talking about Stormy Daniels. Oh, well, build the wall, even though I don't believe in doing that.
Yep.
It's like, this is the same thing. This is what Facebook is doing. It's like, oh my God, all this stuff has come out. We better do something to help our image. And it's cynical. And I don't know. That's my take.
So here's there's a place, here's where my wife and I had a discussion the other night. Do you think that they changed their name also to escape a bad brand? Or do you think that's because, leadership believes that the future of the company is the metaverse?
I have no doubt that Mark Zuckerberg is delusional enough to think he can build the metaverse. Delusional and like darkly ambitious enough to want to build the metaverse. But it has as much to do with that as it does just brand washing. They want to change. Like, nobody likes Facebook. I mean, very few people have a positive association with the name of their company, or the old name of their company. And so the idea that they're changing their brand, yeah, I mean, it probably has as much to do with changing people's perception of their company as it does with where they want to be heading. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, you actually put it better than I probably could. I think that Mark actually is a true believer that this is the future and that's where he wants to go. And I think that's probably for him, and he's got, a controlling share of the company. That's probably for him like 90% of this.
Yeah.
And then it's just so happens that it's convenient that they also kind of get away from the Facebook identity a little bit, especially as they roll out, these new Horizon and whatever else, which is going to be, I'm sure, Meta Horizon now and Meta. I don't remember what the other one's called, but these experiences that they're kind of like going to break from Facebook on and not have them be Facebook experiences, which will help with their adoption. I saw the Oculus isn't going to have it isn't going to require Facebook login anymore starting next year.
Oh, so yeah. I heard that they were retiring the brand Oculus and just going with Quest.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't see that, but I was curious what they were going to do there.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking about the other day, actually? It's like, do you remember back when Oculus launched their Kickstarter?
Yes, I do.
I wish that I could go back in time and tell myself, in a couple of years, Facebook is going to buy this Indiegogo or whatever, this Kickstarter project, and it's going to result in the end of humanity. Like, Mark Zuckerberg's going to try and create the actual matrix of depression. Like, that's like, if you think, I think about Facebook, I think about Instagram, and I think about like how miserable it makes most of the people that I know when they use it, right? And then I think about like Oculus, where it's not just like collecting like how long you're scrolling and looking at staying on your timeline and how you're reacting with like a like or whatever emoji. It's like, having this thing strapped to your head with sensors looking at your eyes so it can track your eye movements and tracking like the most intimate movements of your body, right? How you use your hands and how you interact with objects in a virtual space. And then it's going to try and monetize that in the same way that it monetizes all of these, reactions on Facebook. And I just can't see it being any healthier at best, compared to like how Instagram or Facebook is. And it's like, I see it being far, far worse, honestly. And so for me, it's like, how the frick can regulators look at Facebook's ambition here and not shut it down immediately and be like, this is not the company that's allowed to do this. You simply can't. I mean, it's like, I always go back to cigarettes with Facebook because that's what it is. Like, Facebook is as addictive as tobacco or nicotine, I guess. But it's like, if, Marlboro decided tomorrow, hey, I know, we've been developing this new product called methamphetamine, and we're going to start doing meth delivery right to your door. That's exactly, like, I know that sounds a little hyperbolic, but that is what metaverse is to me. It's like Facebook moving from, tobacco, cigarettes to methamphetamine as a product. And it's like, how the hell do we allow that? I don't know.
So I was listening to the CTO of Meta, and he was talking about their ambitions, and it was an interview with The Verge, their Decoder podcast. And I didn't get all the way through it, so I've still got another, I think, 15 or 20 minutes left. So sorry if anybody else has listened to it and I'm making a hot take without hearing everything. But he was the guy who came up with the feed, and I just him being in charge of the technical implementation of the metaverse. Yeah, I'm not super optimistic that it is going to avoid the same the problems that exist on Facebook and Instagram with addiction and
depression,
these negative feedback loops.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm hopeful for the metaverse. I am. I do think like we're coming upon the time for the technology, as some people are really skeptical of that. I heard a lot of journalists making hot takes that like it's just not time for it. But I do think it is probably we're maybe a couple years ahead, but this is right about now is when you'd have to be making the investment to really see a payoff in a few years. But there are so many people who now, like where I live, who have and are playing around with VR headsets. Like they own them, and in a few years, I think that kind of the novelty of it fade away, and it'll be more of like, yeah, that's the headset, and I do X, Y, and Z on it, and that's normal. That's a normal thing a person would do.
See, here's the thing. I'm very skeptical about like a metaverse that relies on strapping a HMD to your head and buckling, controllers to your hands and, doing that. I'm very, very skeptical that is anything anyone would ever want to do. Like, my thought, like the only way I see like a metaverse working is if it like utilized brain computer interface. Like, and I don't know like what non-invasive BCIs look like what kind of experience they could deliver. So for me, it's like, something like a metaverse would have to include like invasive brain implants in order for it to be like the experience that Facebook wants to deliver. That's the skepticism that I have. It's like, how will normal people engage with the metaverse? I don't think most people will. It's hard for me to even convince some of my friends who are like around my age, maybe a little younger than me, to even try the Valve Index. It's like,
well,
go ahead.
What about the idea that it doesn't have to necessarily be VR? Like the experience, some people will experience it in VR, but some people will experience it in just as like a 3D environment that they load on their computer. Because I have seen kind of this whole metaverse thing is a little weird concept because everybody associates it with VR, but I don't think it necessarily has to be. Like the idea that you can take a digital avatar of yourself and move between different virtual experiences.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe that's not the definition of the metaverse, but to me, that's the definition of the metaverse.
I think about like that, and I look at like all of the failed attempts, like, you remember There? Did you ever play that game?
I'm not sure.
I mean, it was called There, and there was also PlayStation Home, and there were also like all these other ones. Second Life. Like Second Life has like a cult following, but I wouldn't say that it's popular, So for me, I'm very skeptical of the idea. It's like even World of Warcraft, like, because that's kind of the whole point of like a metaverse, right? Is like you go on there to be with your friends, and you have like your um, you know, let's say that metaverse functions like, you know, you have your digital avatar. There's like a landing place where you have, it works like, you know, PlayStation Home or VR chat or whatever. And then you can go into these other experiences with the same avatar, and you have the same like assets, like, you know, cosmetics and stuff throughout all these different experiences. I just don't see that as like a reasonable thing. Like that doesn't seem to me like something that people want. You know, like maybe when climate change gets so bad that living life, it means you have to stay home all day, every day, right? But like, you know, you live in a freaking bunker underground because like climate change has destroyed the, you know, the overworld. But like, maybe that's what does it. Like, in order to see grass, in order to literally touch grass, you have to go into the freaking metaverse. Maybe that's the appeal. Maybe that's Zuckerberg's wanting to monetize the end of the world. That's what it is. But like, I don't know, dude. I'm so skeptical of like this idea. Like, I don't know, man. I don't see how it makes sense, except for in these weird niche circumstances.
Yeah, I wonder who else is going to compete in this space. I was trying to look the other day, and there are quite a few companies and
Valve is working on
projects in this
Deckard.
space. But
have you heard about Deckard? Have you heard about Deckard?
Huh.
So Deckard is like Valve's Quest, basically. It's a standalone unit. It's battery powered. It runs SteamOS. I think it's ARM based, if I remember correctly. So, and Valve is like working on this headset. So maybe if Valve were to do a metaverse thing, which I'm still skeptical about, like, I wouldn't be so 100% against it as I am with Facebook if Valve were doing it, but still, like, I would be pretty dead set against the idea, even if Valve did it. You know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
now you've got me on a quest to look at Deckard. Okay, yeah, I guess I did see this. Yeah, I feel the same way. I really would love to see an open source metaverse. I was looking, I think maybe we talked about this last time. There are like RFCs, proposed RFCs, and for like metaverse like experiences. I'd like to see a standardized open source, you know, basis for the metaverse, but right now I'm not too hopeful about that.
Yeah, I mean ActivityPub, but like for metaverse. But I mean, even look at like implementations of ActivityPub, and you're like, you know, like I don't know. Maybe I'm just being like too cynical. What do you think? I'm being cynical?
I don't know. I guess I should get my hands. I'm not going to do this, but I'm tempted to get my hands on an Oculus or something and see see if I can get into like the Horizon beta program and see what it's like. I just am so curious what Zuckerberg thinks is going to convince people to interact with this experience. What he thinks is so interesting about it. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a think on that. Spend a few days looking into it and get back to you, because I'm skeptical, but I'm also sometimes on this stuff I'm wrong. Like the things that aren't in my kind of favored areas of like open source and in kind of more open tech ecosystems. I might be totally wrong, and my parents might try out the metaverse, and they're like, "We live here now." I don't
Mhm.
know. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I might just not be the target audience for this, and I might totally be misunderstanding the people who are.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
I
we'll
mean,
see.
yeah. I just had this weird thought, but like, you know, the appeal of the metaverse is, you're diagnosed with like a terminal illness, but for only $100, Mark will take your brain out of your body and put it in a jar, and then you can join the metaverse and keep living. You know what I'm
Yep,
saying? Like
that's what I was thinking.
that.
Yep.
It's like scary. Like, you know what my biggest
Yep.
fear is? Is like, my biggest fear is being a conscious, bodiless brain. That's my biggest fear.
That's your biggest fear?
Mm-hmm. If somehow my brain was isolated from my body, and I didn't have like senses, and I was just a conscious brain.
Oh,
That's
you
it.
mean so yeah. So you're plugged into the metaverse, your brain, and the metaverse goes down one day,
Yeah.
but you're still on life support or whatever. So
Right.
like you're just chilling
Yep.
in your brain.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that is a horrifying nightmare hellscape.
Yes, it is. Because you don't live in here.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
The Have you ever seen the show Dollhouse?
No.
It was by freaking, what's his name? The guy who did Buffy and Firefly. I can't remember his name.
Okay.
Joss Whedon. So he made a show called Dollhouse, and Dollhouse was about like these, like they had this way of imprinting personalities on people, and so like there were people who owed like debts and stuff, and they would like volunteer to give 2 years of their life to have different personalities imprinted on their brains, and they would be like rented out to people as like,
Oh.
yeah.
Yep.
And so like, let's say, oh, I'm a rich dude, and I want like a beautiful girl on my arm who has like a Russian, killer, whatever. I don't know, like just some random thing. I want her to have this personality. So she has this personality for the day. She goes back and then is imprinted with a different personality and goes to somebody else, right? Like really weird and creepy. And they had like, if you were misbehaving and they couldn't properly imprint on you, they would send you to the attic, which is where your brain was disconnected from your body, and you would have like your brain was used to basically power their entire computing infrastructure. And like that is intensely scary to me. Like that's so scary. Anyway, I don't know why I brought that up, but that's like what I imagine all of this ending up as, just like these creepy reprogrammed people who, are part of the metaverse. I don't know.
So I have a question, and I had one rant planned, but I think we should finish it out with, what do you feel about brain computer interfaces and like Neuralink and things like that?
I'm never gonna do it.
Yeah.
The thing about all of like, for me, a BCI would be, I would never be able to trust it. Like,
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you can install a BCI and it's you can put whatever software you want on it, right? But it's like, would you really be able to trust something that was like in your brain? I don't know, like it would have to have some kind of like wireless access. And at that point, somebody could hack into your head, like literally.
Yep.
And depending on like what endpoints in your brain it connects to, they could rewire you as a person. I mean, if the technology gets that far, you know what I'm saying? Part of me is like,
if it's two-way.
yeah, part of me is like, it would be really nice to have something like that, for people who have like chronic pain, and they could use that instead of medication to manage their pain. Like there's the empathetic side of me where like there's medical applications, but like as soon as it becomes, you can install this thing in your head and now you can learn karate in like 20 minutes, like all bets are off. I mean, it's like the idea of like doping in the Olympics, or using performance enhancing drugs in any sport. It's like, what happens when, in order to get a job at a corporation, you have to have a BCI so that you're more productive,
Yep.
all that stuff is just too much for me. And then it becomes the Borg, and we lose our humanity and our individuality.
Yeah. I mean, before people, if I brought this up in polite conversation, people thought I was crazy, but here we are, and this technology becomes more and more a reality every day. With, the Neuralink stuff is pretty impressive if you hop in there and kind of even do some cursory research. Like there's quite a lot of interesting stuff they managed to accomplish with those pigs that they implanted with the BCI. The fidelity. So we did play with one at System 76 that we made, based on net schematics. And but it wasn't an implant. It's just the ones that you put on your skull, and they measure like your what do they call them?
Delta
There's
waves.
a scientific word. Yeah, exactly. And you can manipulate some things based on just like, you have to tell it, if I do this, do this.
Right.
And it's super interesting and super cool. It's very, very, very low fidelity. Like, you can't, when it's reading it from outside of your brain through that layer of skull, it's like very hard to make sure you get the accurate read consistently. And but it was very cool. Like I was thinking, if I could just put a hat on, essentially, and then control my computer and type with just my brain, that would be very efficient. I think, after you got used to it.
Right.
And I also think about I have a friend who has ALS, I guess. Lou Gehrig's, like Stephen Hawking. Is that the right
ALS
term
is
for
Lou
it?
Gehrig's disease. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he has been controlling his computer by voice for as long as I've known him. Which has been a few years. And he's kind of losing some of that vocal control that he had before, so it's become much harder for him to. He's a developer, but he has to say, everything out loud that he wants to type, and fortunately, he's managed to set up his development environment to be pretty efficient, given that he has to just speak to his computer. But as he kind of loses that ability to speak clearly, he's even talked quite a lot about like these programs, these pilot programs at universities for using this technology, and like you were saying, those applications, that's super interesting, because it would give him more years of productive, like from his perspective, he said, like, if I can't speak, it'll be impossible to do development at a pace that's makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And he wants the ability to continue doing that, because it's one of those activities that you can do,
Right.
just if you're confined to just a chair all day. And so for folks like him, I'm like, yeah, this is absolutely like breakthrough technology, and like it will totally change his quality of life. And then, like, for myself, it's it'll be quite hard unless, yeah, you have the peer the problem of, like, your peers, who you're supposed to be interacting with are, like, they got Google in their brain,
Yeah.
and you're, like, expected to be able to be productive alongside them, but even still, I don't think it's not for me necessarily either.
Yeah.
I don't even know what level of security and cryptographic in innovation that would have to happen for me to ever feel comfortable, and if there is a level that we can reach that I'd be comfortable with.
Yeah. Dude, it all comes back to Star Trek for me, because like the vast majority of like my ethical thought process always kind of comes back to Star Trek with technology.
Okay.
You're familiar with the Next Generation, I would assume.
Mhm.
So, for example, there is a great example of a BCI in Next Gen. He's in almost every episode. Geordi LaForge, right? He was born blind, and he was given the visor, and like when he takes the visor off, you see the two little terminals on his temples. That goes right into his visual cortex. Not everyone in Star Trek, not everyone in Starfleet has BCIs, right? Like most people don't. Geordi LaForge does, and that's because he needs it. He needs it to be able to see. And then there was another episode where Worf was in an accident and his spine was crushed, right? And they were trying to train him, train his muscles and his brain to be able to control his muscles with his brain using a BCI. But they don't do that for people who don't need it, right? Like only the people who have injuries or who were born with congenital birth defects receive that kind of stuff. And for me, it's like humanity today is not wise enough to do that. Like we're not wise enough. And we would see, all the benefits of, oh yeah, who needs regular eyeballs when you can have, full spectrum visors? And so people would start just having their eyes removed and replaced with, BCI sensors. And then it becomes the rat race of who can get the most augmentations, just to stay current and to stay, I don't know. I just see it as like dystopian. It sucks too, because it's like there are so many medical applications for stuff like that, but at a certain point,
at least the role you were saying we're not wise enough. At least the role of technology and how we use technology right now in this moment in history is definitely we're not wise enough as a society to implement this in a way that won't end up hurting a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you said it that way, because I think that's true of almost all the technology we're talking about.
Yeah.
Literally, like almost everything we've talked about, with the metaverse, and like in other episodes we talked about social media, and like the over and over again, it's all comes back to this: is that our technology is getting more and more ubiquitous, more and more powerful, and yet we're not learning lessons on what we learn.
Yeah.
As far as like limits and like when does it go from helpful to dystopian.
Right.
And so so not on the BCI train.
No. Suffice it to say, no. I don't know. I would love to know what everybody out there thinks, what people listening think about this. Are you on the BCI train? Would you get a brain computer interface? What would be like the things that you would need to feel comfortable getting one? Let us know in the comments or send us an email, show@offtopical.net. Dude, we've been recording for 1 hour and 11 minutes, my friend.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I think this has been a good episode. How about you?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good indeed.
If you guys like what we're doing here, you can follow us on YouTube. You can head over to offtopical.net, where we have links to get the show on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, or just in your favorite podcast reader. That's going to do it for now, though. Ryan, thank you for being here, my friend. I appreciate it.
Yep. Catch you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.